2 letters and 2 numbers stamped into the side of a brass can. The same can turned fans, tape recorders, toys with other names on the box. Anybody could order it. It sat in a Mabuchi catalog at a price by the thousand. And in a Tyco slot car, that ordinary catalog motor pulled harder than it pulled anywhere else on Earth. Same housing, same magnet, same brushes, same brass. The wire on its armature was 0.07 of a millimeter thick, wound 300 turns, everywhere except here. One line of that specification was rewritten by a man in southern New Jersey and sent to a factory that had never taken a design instruction from a customer before. They fought him, then they built it his way. Every other number on that motor arrived exactly as it came out of the catalog. Nobody looked at that one line for half a century. This is the last whistle, where the small machines get taken apart properly. Subscribe before we start. So which number did they change, and what did it cost them to win? Both of those numbers are on paper, and the paper is not hard to get. Start with the easiest document to check, what the company filed with its own government. There are 2 beliefs to clear out of the way first. The first is the name. There was never a motor by that designation. There was a Japanese catalog motor, ordered the way anyone could order from a catalog, and there was a label. In 2020, the man who ran the largest forum in the hobby did the thing nobody had done in 50 years. He called the factory in Japan and asked them directly. The factory told him the letters on the side were never theirs. They had come from an advertising agency, not a part number, a line of copy. The second belief is bigger, that an American toy company could not have built a motor like this anyway. That buying was the only option. It was not. The man who ran research and development on the slot car line wrote it down himself decades later. They manufactured their own tools and molds, their own products, and they made and wound their own motors for the trains. This film went looking for a second witness and found one. The train collectors who documented that line wrote that the motors were the only part of the train line the company did not make. The firm that had gotten its start making motors was buying them in. And then it went back to making its own. For the trains, they came back. For the slot cars, they never did. There is one more line of paper worth reading before the story starts, and it takes 4 seconds. Search the patent record for electric motors. Count what each company holds. The American Toy Company, none. Its rival across town, the one that made its own, 2. One of them is titled, in plain words, Miniature Electric Motor. That rival reached into the motor class. This company never did. Why? Saturday morning smelled like ozone. That was the transformer warming up under the table where a father had run the cord. The track came out of a box and went around the table leg. The joints never quite held, so they got taped. Then came the sound. Not the clatter of the flat cars on the other side of the neighborhood. A whine, high, thin, continuous, climbing as the trigger went down until the car came off the rail on the far corner. A boy could tell the two apart from another room, in the dark, without looking. By noon, his thumb had gone numb on the trigger, and there was a split in the nail on his index finger from prying the car back onto the rail.
Monte Carlo, where racing reputations have been made and lost. I think it's one of the most exciting race courses in the world.
The father did not stay to race. He set the transformer down, checked the cord was clear of the doorway, and went back to whatever Saturday meant for him. That was the arrangement in a lot of houses. The track was the gift. The afternoon belonged to the boy. By evening, the cars ran hot enough that a boy could feel it through the shell when he picked one up, and the whine had dropped a note as the brushes wore in. A boy could hear that change and not have a single word for what caused it. He learned the sound before he learned the brand. Most of them did, and the thing making that sound had come off a ship from Hong Kong, out of a catalog anyone in the world could order from. The line between these two companies was never about the shape of the motor. It was about who owned it. On the flat cars, the motor did not exist as an object at all. The magnet, armature, and brushes dropped into recesses cut into the chassis itself. The motor only became a motor when the chassis was molded around it. To build that car, the factory had to build the motor. There was no shelf of motors, no part number on a purchase order. If the chassis was scrap, so was the motor. The tooling and the motor were the same decision. The can changed that completely. A sealed brass box could be bought whole, dropped into an opening, and screwed down. Two engineers could now work on opposite sides of the Pacific and never speak. One designed the car, the other designed a motor for everybody. And the patent says so, in a sentence its lawyers wrote and nobody has read out loud since. The motor, it says, may be conventional, of any desired construction. The frame is drawn, the gear train is drawn, the pickup is drawn, and in the middle, where the motor goes, there is a rectangle with nothing inside it. An empty square. That is not an oversight. A patent drawing shows what a company is claiming. The rectangle is empty because the rectangle is not theirs. They patented the box the motor sits in. Once could be a lawyer taking a shortcut. What about twice? 5 years later, the same company filed on its train line, the line where it really was making and winding its own motors. The claim covers the shell of the truck, the frame, the recesses, the way the parts sit in it. And inside it, the same idea. A motor in said first recess. They wound those motors themselves for decades. They never protected a single one. Twice. 2 products. 2 decades. 2 different sets of facts. The thing this company chose to own was the housing. Not once, in any filing, did it try to own a motor. So if they had the machines, had the men, and had already proved they could build motors, what was the actual price of doing it here? To wind a motor, a factory needs laminations. Thin steel plates stamped by the 1000 and stacked into the core the copper wraps around. A progressive die does that. It is a block of tool steel machined like a precision instrument, with a row of stations inside it. The strip goes in flat. Finished parts come out the other end. And the die is paid for before a single car is sold. The engineer who lived through it left exactly one line about the cost. The dies, he wrote, were the major problem. Progressive blank and form dies are expensive. 4 exclamation marks. That is the whole record. No number, not $1 figure. And that missing number is almost the point. An American toy company would amortize that block of steel across one product line, one car, one scale, one country. The Japanese supplier could amortize the same class of tooling across the world. The same motors went into toys, fans, tape recorders, anything that needed a small can turning at a known speed. The supplier was not selling motors. It was selling the cost of everybody else's motors, divided. One correction matters, and this film would rather make it than skip it. The memoir says the American company's volume pushed the supplier into opening its Hong Kong plant. It is a good line. He wrote 3 words beside it, though. I was told. The supplier's own corporate record puts that plant 5 years earlier, before the slot car line existed. So the story off the shop floor is wrong, and the man telling it had already marked it as hearsay. The leverage ran the other direction from the first order, so the American company did the arithmetic. And bought. And the arithmetic worked. Not because of the motor, because of what the company did with it. The engineer built 25 kits. Each one held 10 feet of straight track, a pre-wired terminal, a power pack, and an on-off button taken from a train accessory. Salesmen cannot drive slot cars, so the button did the driving. The kit went on the customer's conference table. 2 competitor cars went on the track. The winner ran the next competitor, then the next, and at the end of the line, the fastest car in the room ran against theirs. By his account, they sold 400,000 loose cars that way, at the new price of $4. Before the strip, he wrote, the company could barely give away 20,000 of the old ones at $2.50, 20 times the volume. At the higher price, not the lower one. That is what the bought motor did for them. It won on a conference table, in front of a buyer, in under a minute. The company's genius was never in the can. It was in knowing exactly what to do with a can anybody could buy. That is a reasonable decision. It is also quietly permanent, because buying did not mean going quiet. They knew exactly what they wanted the motor to do. The stock winding used fine copper wire, wrapped 300 times around each pole. They wanted heavier wire, wrapped fewer times. Thicker wire, fewer turns. Thicker copper carries current more easily. Fewer turns puts less wire in the way of it. Both changes push the same direction. More current moving through the same magnetic field, and the field pushes back harder on the armature. That push is torque. Torque coming out of a corner is the whole game in this scale. The cost is heat, and heat has nowhere to go inside a sealed can. A motor wound that way accelerates harder and lives a shorter life. That was the trade, and it is the only number in this motor a man in New Jersey was ever in a position to trade. That was not a purchasing request. It was a design instruction sent from New Jersey to a factory that had never asked for one. The supplier's reaction is recorded in 3 words. They went ballistic. Then they backed down. It might work, they said. They would not warranty it. A toy company in southern New Jersey had just told one of the largest small motor manufacturers on Earth that it had wound the motor wrong. And won. That was the high water mark. But even at the high water mark, there was a line between what they could change and what they could not. They could specify the copper. They could not specify the iron. The armature came in 1 diameter because that diameter was set by the housing, and the housing was set by the catalog. A rival motor ran a slimmer armature, lighter, quicker to spin up. That was not an option here. They were tuning inside somebody else's envelope, and they had no say in the size of the envelope. It was supposed to be an exclusive winding. Theirs, nobody else's. The next year, it appeared in the supplier's catalog as a standard item. 12 months. That is how long the exclusive lasted. The specification they had fought for became a line anybody could order, including the people they were racing against, in the same scale, on the same tracks, that same season. They did not lose that argument. They won it. And the winning is what cost them. Because an improvement a company does not own does not stay with it. It goes into the catalog. And the catalog goes to everyone. So if the motor was not theirs and the winding was not theirs, what in this car did they actually invent? The answer is the best engineering in the whole story. And it is invisible. A slot car needs downforce, magnetic grip pulling the chassis toward the steel rails so it can carry speed through a corner. The obvious way is to buy another magnet, another part, another supplier, another cost. They did not. There was already a magnet inside the motor they had bought. Its field did not simply stop at the wall of the housing, so they stamped steel plates and routed that leftover field down to the rails. No second magnet, no second supplier. The downforce came free from a component they were buying anyway. In the engineer's own words, a major cost saving. That is not a motor improvement. It is a way of using somebody else's motor twice. And now the line from the opening comes back, with a reason attached. The can needed windows cut into it so the field could escape. They could not stamp the housings themselves. The blank housings were punched at the supplier's Hong Kong plant. When they arrived in New Jersey, the windows were cut by hand cut, on the part that made their best idea work. So what did buying the motor actually cost them? There is one measurement that answers it. Inside the motor is a gap between the magnet and the spinning armature. Smaller is better. Magnetism falls away fast across empty space. Close the gap by half, and what reaches the armature is far more than twice as strong. Every thousandth of an inch of air in there is field that was paid for in magnet and never delivered as torque. Motor designers spend whole careers closing that gap. 3 things set it: the thickness of the housing wall, the diameter of the magnet sitting against it, and the diameter of the armature spinning in the middle. All three were fixed the day the can was drawn, in a plant drawing it for fans and tape recorders. The gap in this can was 18 thousandths of an inch. Two competitors in the same scale, in the same years, ran gaps almost half that. Thousandths. 14 thousandths. Those motors were not better wound. The copper on them was ordinary. They were better housed. And the housing was the one thing on this list that arrived sealed. Their motors were designed for their cars. Their engineers could move the wall. Nobody in New Jersey could. The gap was not a decision anyone there made. It arrived in the box. That is what buying the heart of a product actually costs. Not the price on the invoice. The measurements, nobody there got a vote on. 4 fingerprints were left on that motor. The winding specification, the windows in the can, the path the field took to the rail, and the name on the side. Not one of them has a person attached. Here is everything this film could find. Not the name of the engineer in Japan who went ballistic. Not his title. Not a letter. Not a telex. Not a date on a memo. Not the name of the magnet supplier who warned that a magnet pressed the wrong way could come out looking like a potato chip. That is the most alive sentence in the whole file, and there is no human being attached to it. Not the name of the executive who killed the rebuilt motor when it was priced too high. He is 3 words in a memoir, plural and anonymous. Former salespeople. There is one name from the Hong Kong side, printed on the patent itself as co-inventor. A jig designer. His name is on the front of one piece of paper. Nothing else. No photograph, no interview, no record of what happened to him. And there are no production figures, no invoice, no unit price, no shipment count between the two companies in either direction. The man who ran quality control did not know how many cars ever shipped with the part he was describing. One design detail, according to him, was worked out on a restaurant napkin. The napkin is gone too. So what actually disappeared? Not the company. Companies get bought. This one was taken in 1970, and its name is printed as owner on the second patent. What disappeared was the winding. Nobody ever wrote it down. There is no patent for the motors the train line wound in-house. They made them for decades and never protected the method because the method was not a document. It lived in a machine and in the hands of the people who ran it. 40 years later, the engineer sat down to rebuild the motor he had lost the argument over. There were no winding machines left, so he built 3. 3 generations of them, each one better than the last, before the copper would lay down the way he needed it to. The gears could not be bought either. He filed the teeth by hand. 468 of them. In August of 2015, he posted a photograph of the result. 13 running units, lined up in a row, and then the smallest detail delivers the biggest payoff. The standard brushes from the old motor, the ones the company had bought by the million, did not fit the brush tubes of the one he had made. After 40 years, it was finally his. The parts network is gone now. The specialist shop closed when its owner died. The dedicated website went dark 20 years ago. The restoration shop has been silent since 2016. And on the busiest forum in the hobby, there has not been a single new thread about these cars in 12 months. But the racing did not stop. It is bigger than it was. Every motor winning today is a descendant of the flat one, the design that could not be bought, and so had to be built. They won the races. The other company won the century. So which number did they change, and what did it cost them to win? They changed the copper, 700ths to 800ths, 300 turns down to 250. It is the only number on this motor with an American fingerprint on it, and they held it for 12 months. The one they never touched was the gap, 18 thousandths of an inch of air, set in a plant that had never seen a slot car track. They kept that one for 60 years. Inside the can, nothing else was theirs either. Inside the can, none of it. The armature, the magnet, the brushes, the bearings, the brass itself. All of it arrived on a ship, out of a catalog made by people whose names are not in any file. Outside the can, one thing, the label. And the label turned out to be the part that lasted. This August, in 3 weeks of auctions, more than 20 of these cars changed hands. The most expensive item was not a car, it was a motor, sealed to its original card, never opened, still carrying 2 letters and 2 numbers on the side. It went for more than a rare model with its box and paperwork intact. The one thing the company never made is now the most valuable thing in the collection, and it is still sealed under a name an advertising agency invented. A month ago, a restorer posted that the original gears for the flat cars have become hard to find because they were made by one company for one chassis. When that company stopped, the supply stopped with it. Both companies got exactly what they signed up for 60 years later to the letter. A man who grew up on these cars could close his eyes tonight and see the whole chain of it. A brass housing punched in Hong Kong, windows cut by hand in New Jersey, a field bent down to the rails by a stamped steel plate, a name written by somebody who never touched any of it. 4 decisions, and only one of them was ever really about a motor. When a company buys the heart of its own product, it can still tune it. It can argue with the factory and win. What it cannot do is move the walls, and the last few thousandths of an inch always live in the walls. That is the rule. And it is sitting in a box in somebody's attic tonight, 18 thousandths of an inch wide, inside a can nobody has ever opened. Open one, measure the gap, and then decide how much of that car was ever theirs. Before the lights go out on this one, this film exists because a stranger picked up a telephone, asked a factory a direct question, and wrote down the answer where anyone could find it. There are more machines on this bench that deserve the same. Subscribe. It is the strongest vote there is for that kind of story. And the next time that motor comes out of the box, you will know exactly whose it was.